Welcome everyone to the group chat brought to you by Overmark. I'm your host Darrell, and today with me is Shalyn, and we're going to be talking about a topic that many of you are interested in, which is how do we stop procrastinating? So I think this is a topic that both me and Shalyn can really relate to because we've been students ourselves, so really understand the struggles of procrastination. And today we hope to shed some light on this topic.
Hi everyone, Shalyn here. Yeah, I think like Darrell said, right, we've been students ourselves, and I just want to say, right, like I don't think it's just students that procrastinate. Yeah, I think it's very human nature to procrastinate. So if you are a procrastinator, like you identify yourself as one, don't feel so bad. Your peers probably do procrastinate as well. Yeah, we're all in this together. Yeah, so Darrell, I guess, do you have any stories you'd like to share? Like, what is the worst that you have procrastinated until?
Basically, I procrastinated my entire JC1 studies. Okay, so I just
Serious?
wanted
The whole of JC1?
yeah, okay. I'll just share a bit of context in terms of like my personality and my own personal story. So I would say that like as I would finish O level, I felt like I was in a good school, in a good system with good friends that motivated me. So I was very comfortable. I was very happy. So by the way, I DS8 lah, but I still did quite okay for my O level. So I moved into JC, right? It was a whole new world in terms of the amount of CCAs and the amount of activities that I could do. So I really did not focus my energy onto academics. I was really focused on like the curricular stuff. I was like organizing camps, I was really into trying out new things and having fun. So I did a lot of things on the outside, and then I really procrastinated on my academics. So I remember in JC1, right, for my first mid-year exam, I was 60th percentile, which to me is not too bad because it just means you're in the middle of the pack, right? Then by promos, I dropped to maybe 50 percentile. So I was still in the middle of the pack, still okay. But the moment after promos, right, there was like a good 1.5 months of holiday. I completely did not touch my books at all, while my other friends were like trying to recap and prepare for JC2 because they knew what was coming. So when it came March for our first common test, I dropped straight to 10th percentile, which is like the bottom 10% in the whole JC. So from like that process of like completely not studying is exactly procrastination. Why? It's because I hated it. I really didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to do it because I really didn't want to do it. So I just kept delaying on the preparation. I just say, okay, I'm busy. I got orientation camp to organize. So I just pushed away those responsibilities for myself in terms of that I was supposed to study. So I really struggled because by the time it came midterms, I was still around 10th, 20th percentile because I was lagging behind so much because of my procrastination in like the second half of JC1 and the first half of JC2. So it really took a lot of effort for me to really turn my ship around from my midterms onwards in JC2 to A levels itself. So that took extraordinary amounts of effort. I had to spend like 10 to 12 hours a day studying just to catch up on what I missed out on. So my personal story, I think a lot of people can relate to, which is pushing things aside just because we don't want to do it. So I'm just curious about you, Shalyn. You shared with me briefly before the podcast that you identify yourself as a procrastinator as well. So what's your story?
Yeah, so basically, maybe I start from when I was in primary school, right? When I was in primary school, I was honestly a super hardworking student. Yeah, I was the kind of person that I was always doing work, always doing assessment book. I'm the kind of person that asked my own mother for tuition, that kind. Like I asked her to give me more tuition. Yeah, got nothing to do, take out test paper to do, that kind of person lah. Okay. Then I don't know why I went to secondary school. Then I was like, wow, I studied so hard for what? Maybe it's because my PSLE score, even though I studied so hard, I only got, I think, 251, I think. Yeah. Then I was like, that I expected myself to do better, I would say. So when I went to secondary school, I started to slack off a bit, right? And then after that, O level coming. I mean, I slacked off all the way until maybe I was like sec 3, sec 4. And then after that, suddenly, oh shit, O levels is coming in like 5 months, 6 months. Then suddenly you have to study like at least 2+ years worth of stuff in those that short amount of time, right? And that is like my very first taste of procrastination. Yeah. And then it's a vicious cycle. So after O levels, I told myself, wow, I'm never gonna do this to myself ever again, right? But then A level comes, and then you're like, after like you said, right? in J1, you are just, playing, you just join a new school, you make new friends, you join a new CCA. Then I was in student council, which honestly took a lot of my time up lah. Okay. I'll tell myself, okay, after this event, I'm gonna start studying. After this thing, I'm gonna start, and it just keeps going backwards, until suddenly, shit, prelim result come back. I didn't do, I did. Okay, actually, no, my prelims I did quite well. No, not very well. I got like 50 plus rank points only lah. But my physics improved a lot. Yeah, I think I went from like a U to a B. Yeah, but the rest, I mean, my subjects, like I didn't do as well as I wanted, I would say. Then I was like thinking, wow, if I get this for A levels, right, what's going to happen to me? So it's like I procrastinate all the way until like I always procrastinate until like 5-6 months left, right? Then I'll start studying for it like hardcore. Yeah, which is a very vicious cycle. And I realized now I come to uni, right? I do the same thing. I come to uni, okay, and uni is super toxic. You know why? Because, right, the only important periods of time are your midterms and your finals. I always confirm plus chalk, right? Without fail, right? I will wait until like maybe 1 week, 2 weeks before the exam, right? Then I'll go and cram all the web lectures. I will go and watch and then I'll times 2 speed, I think it's because I have the liberty of doing that. Because they recorded the lecture, that's why I have the liberty of doing so. Yeah, so it's just a vicious cycle. I really don't recommend it. It's very unhealthy for your sleep schedule and your skin because your skin gets super rubber. You super stressed, right? Then you suddenly get a lot of pimples. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, so that's a bit about my personal experience lah.
I think this is a story that everyone can relate to. So let's delve into the science of procrastination. What are the reasons why people procrastinate? I think there's a very simple, I think we don't even have to explain it, but humans tend to avoid things that we don't like to do, right? So if you see your homework or revising as a chore and you don't want to do it, there's a good chance you would try and find excuses for yourself not to do it. So I think that's a very common reason why people procrastinate is because they see the task at hand as a chore. So be it whichever stage you are in your life, even as an adult itself, like for myself at work, there's this like work stream that I really do not want to handle because it's very troublesome. So I always procrastinate on that. And it always makes things worse. Why? Because the more troublesome it is, actually, the earlier I move in to nip the problem in the bud and solve it, it actually helps me downstream and make life easier for later on. So things are a lot easier. In the context of studying, if you really hate this chapter itself, all the more you should do it. Why? Because if you procrastinate and you refuse to tackle this chapter, it will lead up, and then the next few subsequent chapters, you're going to suffer. So the first reason that I really identify is because people hate it, and we're going to talk about how we can overcome it later on. But Shalyn, I just wanted to see your perspective. What are some other reasons why students might tend to procrastinate when it comes to studies?
Okay, like I think I want to start by saying, I think for me it's the inverse. So right now I have a full-time job, right? But I'm also doing my last semester in uni. But I'm also teaching tuition. Okay. So that means that my schedule is super duper packed. And because of that, right, I do not have the liberty to procrastinate anymore. Yeah. So I guess for me, I keep myself busy, right? Okay. And that helps me procrastinate less because I know in my head, if I don't do this now, I will die. Okay. Like my life will be so hard later on. And everything, like you said, right, will just snowball, and then it just gets out of hand. And then one day you're just like, oh my God, why did I put myself in this position in the first place? Yeah. Why I procrastinate, or why I guess me and my friends procrastinate, right? I think it's always because you have the mindset that there's always more time lah. Or maybe some people want to push themselves. They're like, how fast, how little time can I take to do this? Like how far can I delay this? I've seen people who like they write a 10,000 word essay in one night, that kind. Like the paper is due the next day and they do it the night before. Why? Because they want to challenge themselves. Yeah. If you're the kind of person that cannot afford this kind of risk, or if you're the kind of person that really, you will get very stressed. I know some people get very stressed. Some people get very stressed when a lot of things pile up, right? And then that deters them even more because they're so stressed, right, that they just end up not wanting to do anything. And I think also because nowadays, we have a lot of distractions. Yeah, I don't know about you, but Netflix is a super huge distraction for me. So whenever I feel stressed, the minute stress hits my mind, right, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna watch Netflix. And then it's the same few shows. I always watch like Friends so that I can zone out. Then it's honestly some psychological effect. Like when you are feeling super stressed, right? Your go to activity will be the thing that lets you zone out the most. Yeah. So I guess it's a lot of reasons lah, right? There's so many excuses nowadays as to why you can procrastinate. Um, but there's one thing in common, right? Everybody knows, right, that you should not procrastinate. Yeah. So I guess Darrell, do you have any tips as to how to avoid procrastination?
Okay, going back to it, right? I just wanted to touch on something that you shared in terms of like your coping mechanism when you are feeling stressed. So I think that applies for everyone. It can be really different lah. So some of you might be suddenly you take out your phone, you play games. For some of you, you might be scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, whatever's your coping mechanism itself. But when the stress accumulates, right, you'll find a coping mechanism, and it's a very vicious cycle because it keeps you delayed from completing the task that you have to do. I think the dangers of procrastination comes in the form of just visualize yourself running a marathon. Do you want to, just not run the marathon and start walking? And then when you realize that you only have like a limited amount of time left, and then you have to sprint for the rest of the way through, I don't think that's a sustainable strategy. And when you hit that point, you burn out. And then that's when your coping mechanism comes in. You procrastinate even more. You're likely to not reach the finish line that you set up for yourself. So the dangers of procrastination you need to realize is that you're just taking the work you're supposed to do now and you're pushing it to your future self, and your future self is gonna suffer. So I think that's a very strong reason why you should not procrastinate. I don't think we have to elaborate further on it. So let's go and talk about how can we reduce procrastination. So I think this is a very valid point. So I think Shalyn already touched on this earlier, but keep yourself busy and keep yourself accountable. So for myself, I'm also working a full-time job. I'm also giving tuition, both private group tuition. At a side, as a hobby, I also do wedding videography. And on top of that, we're also running overmark. So my plate is full, like really full. And like I'm really shag out every single day. But I know that if I don't complete a certain task, I'm not hitting the milestone that I set up for myself. I'm either letting my students down because I'm not putting enough preparation for my lessons, or maybe I'm not performing well at work. So there's a lot of factors that comes into play to keep myself motivated. So I think all of it really boils down to the idea on how bad do you want it, right? So if you really want something bad enough, you're going to do everything that you can to get it. So just think of yourself right now, you're like maybe you're swimming, you're diving underneath the water, and you're really like struggling, and you need that breath of air. You're going to do anything you can do just to get that breath of air. So you really need to train yourself and configure the way you think about things and really decide what is it that you want for yourself. I know you might say that, hey, studies is not for me, education is not for me, but you need to ask yourself beyond just your grades itself, what is it that you want for yourself in this lifetime? What is it that you want to achieve? Do you want to be mediocre, or do you want to be able to achieve great things? I'm not talking just about your grades, but I'm talking about life in general. Let's say if you want to achieve great things and you want to do a lot of things that you set out for yourself to do, you cannot afford to procrastinate. So for myself, I just want to share a bit more about Overmark, since this is a platform that we're all more or less familiar with if you're listening to this podcast. So Overmark was actually only started during circuit breaker last year. So when I sat down and then some of my students were talking to me like, hey, now it's home-based learning, there aren't like good notes. The teachers are also thrown into this all of a sudden. So that's when I set it out to myself to, okay, every week I'm going to produce 2 to 3 chapters of free notes for everyone. And that's how the whole thing got started. And along the way, as we gained more support and more students were asking us for more content, I continued to build, that to where Overmark is today. I wouldn't say it's still great because it's still a work in progress, but at least consistent work has shown results in terms of trying to grow this community together with everyone. So procrastination can be overcome if you find the right motivation. For me, it's all about that motivation. I just share another story quickly since I like to share my stories. So for myself, I play floorball. I played floorball ever since I started in Sec 1 in Catholic High. So all along, my goal for myself was to eventually be able to represent Singapore, okay, to go overseas for a competition. So that was a goal I constantly worked towards. I was good, but I was never like the best in my cohort or the best in my age group. So I really had to work for it, and I had to put in the consistent work. I know that training once a week won't get me anywhere. So I put in the effort to train 5 to 6 times a week. It's tiring, I know. But I knew where my end goal was. And eventually, when I was at like uni, in my second year of uni, I actually made the team. I actually went to Poland for a competition, like representing Singapore. So it's my dream fulfilled. So at least I can look back when I grow older and tell myself that, hey, this is a goal that I set out to achieve, and I achieved it. And it would have never been possible if I procrastinated and keep pushing back on it. So if you have a dream out there that you want to achieve, go for it. But you need to realize that procrastination won't get you anywhere. So my advice is find that motivation from within, that intrinsic motivation that can really spur you on to achieve whatever you set out for yourself. Okay, so for Shalyn, what is your tip for procrastination then?
Well, I think that's very good and deep advice, Darrell. Yeah, I think like you said, right? You must find your right motivation. I agree. But sometimes it's not that easy. I feel to find the right motivation, you really have to reach in deep and think about, why you're doing this or why do you want to achieve this. But what about the times where I guess, for instance, we are stuck in school and we don't see the purpose of studying, right? There are some people who are like that. I would say, okay, my mindset, right, is I need to do this anyway, so why not I do it well, right? Or it can also be, like you say, my motivation sometimes is I think about my parents, right? Like my mom, or like they work so hard for me. So I should, do my best in whatever I do. I think for myself, right, it helps that I'm generally a very competitive person. So I always naturally like I will want to do well or like at least above average, that kind of thing. I would say I'm quite self-motivated lah. Yeah. I think that my tip would be, right, I always do the things that I can finish fastest first. Because the minute I have that sense of accomplishment, right? For me, I'm a very tangible person. I need results, okay, to be motivated. So I always do the simple tasks first. And then the minute you start to get your momentum going, right? I swear it gets easier to get work done. It is not hard actually. You think about it, everything you do, studying, work, etc., right? It's not difficult, right? It is the starting the task that is difficult. It is the inertia to get there that is difficult. But the minute you're going, right, it's easy already, right? It's like, for instance, like you say, the marathon example, right? When you start to run, it's the mindset that, oh my God, I don't want to exercise. I'm going to be so tired, right? And then it's the getting out of the door or like putting on your exercise shoes and clothes, getting out the door that is difficult. But the minute you get to the gym, you have no choice already. You are going to exercise because you already went all the way there, right? So I guess, I would say take it easy from the start. Do the simple things first. And then as you start to, I guess, build on, whatever you're doing and stuff, right? It honestly gets easier. Yeah. And I think another thing is just like fitness, right? Since we are on this analogy, right? The more you do and the longer you do it, the more stamina you build for yourself. So for instance, I mean, it's just, we all experience it, right? When I was in secondary school, maybe when we do, like for instance, math, right? I can only do the simple questions first. But never mind, I understand the simple questions first, right? I understand them to their core, build my foundation, right? Foundation is super important when you're studying. And then after that, like I start to attempt the harder questions, and then it goes harder and harder and harder. So because of this foundation I built for myself, right? I start to be able to do more than I expected. And I think, as humans or as people on this earth, maybe we can challenge ourselves, like, to be better or be the best version of ourselves. I think that is like one of the purposes that we are put here, right? To see how far we can go, how much we can achieve. Yeah. So finding that balance also lah. I think balance is very important. As much as we can say, like, don't procrastinate or like, just try your best, like that kind of thing, right? I know it's very easy to fall into a pit where you are procrastinating, right? I mean, like I've experienced it before. And I just want to say, like, it's okay. It's okay to procrastinate, like a bit, as long as you're self-aware, and then you realize, and then you try and get better. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be like, oh, just because I procrastinate this time around, then after that, like, I'm so dead. Then after that, you're like, wow, why am I so lousy? Then you start to put yourself down. I think that's a very unhealthy mindset. Always try and take it, positively. Like, okay, like, it's you shouldn't take it from the angle that, like, wow, I'm so, like, a negative angle, like, I am so this is this. It should be more of, oh, okay, I displayed this behavior. Why am I like this? How can I improve myself? How can I get better? Yeah, so take it in a positive light lah. Yeah.
I think just to sum up on all these points that we share about overcoming procrastination, I think something that's very important for all our listeners out there to take note of is that it's not something that you can overcome overnight. So we need to think of it, it's more of the atomic changes, the very small micro things that you do that eventually build up. So going back to the marathon analogy, you won't be able to do a marathon overnight without the training for it. You kind of really need to build the stamina. And for studying is what we call mental stamina, right? So as you, maybe you start off, you say today, I only can sit down on my ass and I don't move, right, and study for 1 hour, right? Maybe tomorrow or next week, you try 1 hour, 15 minutes, and then 1 hour, 30, then 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. That's how you build the mental strength and the resilience it is, right? To go through the rigorous process necessary. You won't be able to say, okay, I'm just going to do 8 hours straight. You'll burn out. You won't be able to do it. And that might lead you to have even more dread and a sense of like, I really don't want to touch this. So that just builds a very negative cycle, as Shalyn said, that causes you to procrastinate even more. So when you're trying to build a habit, you need to realize it has to be something sustainable. It has to be goals that you can tangibly achieve. And once you achieve those goals, celebrate those small victories. So you're able to keep yourself motivated to keep pushing on. If you find that by yourself, you're not able to find that motivation to embark on this habit, make yourself responsible and accountable and do it with somebody else or do it with your clique of friends. So you tell your friends, guys, today we end school at 3 p.m. Okay? Before our CCA at 5 p.m. That 2 hours, let's spend at least 1 hour and we revise together. So you hold yourself accountable. Nobody can run away from this promise, and you'll actually sit down and work through the process together. If you're not in the luxury of like being studying in the same space, over your group chats, okay, make sure you report in to make sure that, like I clocked in my hours, I'm doing this, and all of you can do it together. Because honestly, if you find yourself have a study buddy, the journey together is less lonely and it'll be a lot easier. And also make sure that other people, hold you accountable for your actions so you'll procrastinate less. Okay, I think we shared a lot about procrastination itself, but I think a very ongoing trend is the fact that, our social media apps or our phone games, they are the source of distraction and something that we escape to whenever we procrastinate. So the dilemma of the week, okay, Shalyn, I want to ask you, as a student, okay, should I delete social media and phone apps if it's causing me to procrastinate?
I mean, okay, personally, right, I've never done that. I honestly, okay lah, I don't want to like shit on anyone or anything, right? If it works for you, fine. But for me, to me, it's like, even if I delete, I can just re-download what? You know what I mean? It's like it's really about whether or not you want it, or like you said, whether I really want it. If I really want to study, I will study. Whether or not the app is there, right? If I really put my heart and soul into it, I can don't use the app. And I think it's also more of like from an urgency point of view, right? When I am nearing to my exam, right? I find that I will own self just not use the app because I know I'm in survival mode. If I don't do this, I will like die lah, in a sense. So I need to do it, right? And it stems from that. I know of people who use this app actually called Tree, is it? The one where you can plant trees to lock your apps or something like that.
Emmanuel mentioned it in a previous podcast too when we were talking about social media. I think it's called Forest or Tree, I forgot, but it's the same concept.
I don't know. It's some fauna flora thing lah. Yeah. But I think that works quite well also for some people. I know of a lot of friends that use that. But I would say, yeah, my main point will be, if you really want to study, if you really want to do something, you will. Deleting the app will not do anything because you can always re-download it. And nowadays we have 4G, which is so fast. You can re-download it within 10 seconds. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. But what about you, Darrell? Do you find that it works for you?
For me, it's really about the mentality here. I think urgency plays a very huge part. If something is urgent, obviously you're going to push aside everything, including all your distractions to get the job done. Do I think that deleting social media and phone apps work? I think it can work only if you have the discipline to not reinstall it, right? So you set a certain time frame for yourself, like I'm going to go off grid on my IG for the 1 month before my exam. Okay, so if you set that goal and then you promise yourself and you cannot break that promise, then I think it might work, right? Because now you are taking away a source of distraction. Okay, but I just want to be fair to people that are still that are using social media or playing phone games. I think it's perfectly fine because it's a source of outlet. You need to realize that as you run your marathon towards your national exam, it's not a non-stop sprint. You're not studying like 14 hours a day. That's not sustainable. So if you still need that time to watch your K-drama or your Netflix, I think you can go for it. It's just that you need to be disciplined and allocate the time for correct things. So if you're supposed to be studying during this amount of hours that you set for yourself, make sure you study and not use your phone app. But after that, let's say after dinner, you need a 1 hour break, then go ahead and really enjoy that 1 hour of like stress-free drama just to unwind and just to let yourself recuperate. I think that's perfectly fine. So it's really more of like the allocation of time and your discipline to sticking to those slots. So going back to your study groups itself or making a promise to yourself, this is one tip that I really want to share. So for listeners out there that have been listening to this part, right? This is my golden tip on how I prevent procrastination for myself ever since I realized how this works, which is the day before I wake up, okay, at night, I plan out a list of things that I need to do the next day. Like when I'm still, like when I wake up, I'm very groggy. I'm not a morning person. So there are a lot of things that I would try to push back. So the night before, I set out a list of things that I must do through the day, and I promise myself to do it. And not only that, I also tell myself at what time slot I need to be doing what, right? So I don't give myself the luxury of pushing this back till the afternoon or at night because thinking that I have a lot of time left. So I set a time slot for the activity that needs to be accomplished. When I wake up, I'm not a morning person. I'm dying in the morning, but I already knew what I have to do. So it's just about making myself going through the process. And honestly, the sense of accomplishment, right? The moment you have a productive day outweighs the escape, okay, or the coping mechanism that feel that you get from procrastination. So you need to realize that the reward is there. And once you hit that, do reward yourself. So it's like at the end of the day, I can tell myself, hey, I did great and I deserve like my one episode of drama. So you keep yourself motivated through these little victories as well. But everything starts with planning the day before. So really put your mind to it, know what you want to achieve. If there's anything motivating, right, I just want to let you know nobody is going to remember someone that did everything with mediocre effort. People are only going to remember people with exceptional work ethic that really go out of their way to set out to achieve what they want to achieve. Not just about studies, but it's about excellence. People are not going to know about an unknown basketballer, but everybody knows Michael Jordan. Why? Because it's the greatest. I'm not saying you have to go to that extent, but you would really want to be the best version of yourself. You want yourself to be remembered as somebody that puts in effort, that has this insane work ethic that people can look up to. And trust me, procrastination will get you nowhere. Okay, so I hope we shared plenty of tips. But before we close out this segment, Shalyn, I just wanted to get your view on it, okay, on this whole entire topic on procrastination. What is one key takeaway listeners should have?
I would say the key takeaway, right, is I think like we mentioned a lot, right? If you really want it, you will go for it, right? If you really want to stop procrastinating, you will do it. It's not something that anybody can force you to do. Yeah. It's not something even like your mom can do for you. No one can do it for you. It has to come from you yourself. Yeah. I think that I guess another thing would be you have to make yourself accountable to yourself. At the end of the day, everything you do is for yourself, right? You study because you want to get good grades, because next time you want to go to, get a good job, that kind of thing. But you want to achieve A to get to point Z, right? So take that as your biggest motivation. What you're doing is really for yourself, and you are, not just for yourself, but mainly for yourself, right? It's for your own good. And yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway. Yeah, what about you, Darrell?
So I'll end off with this quote. There was never a point in my life that I regretted working hard. Okay, the only regrets that I have was not working hard enough. So I think if there's any consolation to everyone out there is that, it's never too late to start. Okay, putting in effort and being the best version of yourself, I think is the most admirable and respectful thing you can do to your own life. Okay, I think as Shalyn said, it's not about your parents, not about your friends. This is your life. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to lead your life? I think having that intrinsic motivation would really solve a lot on the issues on procrastination, right? Okay. So for all listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I think this has been a very insightful discussion on procrastination. So Shalyn, thank you for coming onto this podcast. And everybody, remember to follow us on Spotify and drop us any topics that you want us to discuss next on Instagram. And we'll look forward to the next podcast.
Thank you. Bye.
It sound right, boy.